Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is October 17th, 2017. In just a moment, we'll be on to your aviation, public, and marine forecast. Remember, you can always get our forecast by calling 1-800-472-0391, or you could go to the website at weather.gov/Alaska. Now let's check out the weather highlights of the day. We have a high surf advisory across the coast from Barrow back over towards Point Lay, and this is for some very gusty winds bringing some higher waves, so expect beach erosion in these locations. And also this entire area in yellow is highlighted for a winter weather advisory, and this is out through tomorrow morning, and we're going to see some northerly winds between 30 to 50 miles per hour, and expect also some snow reducing the visibilities down to 1/2 mile at times. Now the high surf advisory is running through tomorrow afternoon. So let's take a look at the weather system bringing weather across the north coast. You can see an area of clouds that's dropping towards the Brooks Range this afternoon, and this is basically bring that snow line towards the coast and back towards the west coast at this time. Now across the central interior areas of the state, there were a few breaks in the clouds, mainly clear and cold this morning. Now the other area of focus is the low pressure system that's spinning just south of the Alaska Peninsula. This is pushing a front this afternoon. If you take a look over towards the eastern Gulf waters, the low pressure system at the surface is a 972 millibar low. This system is wrapped up, brings some strong northerly flow across the Alaska Peninsula between 30 to 50 miles per hour, with gusty winds on the front of this system, mainly between 30 and 50 miles per hour out of the southeast. Now expect areas across the southeast, they're dry this afternoon with some light shower activity moving up to the northeast coast all the way through the Panhandle. A few light snow showers were occurring along the eastern Copper River locations. Mainly dry across the interior with the snow starting along the north coast with some gustier flow along the northwest coast. Across the areas of the Bering, mainly dry conditions with some weak upper level waves bring some light shower activity across the central waters. Now as we head through tonight, we are going to see that cold air mass sagging towards the southwest, bring some light snow showers along with it. No accumulations are really expected along the Bristol Bay or Kuskokwim Delta, just some trace amounts. Now across the Alaska Peninsula, some light rain showers are going to be occurring on the backside of this low pressure system that's going to be moving some rain into the southeast during the overnight hours. Now some light snow shower activity will also spread into the interior. This also will be very light accumulations, trace expected. As we head into Wednesday, that cold air mass is going to be picking up the offshore flow, especially along areas of the western and Gulf and the Prince William Sound. Whittier will see some winds blowing out of the west direction between 30 and 50 miles per hour for your Wednesday. Now, low pressure system will also bring some gustier flow across the inner channels as that low just sits in the eastern waters there, and then the snow will be ongoing across the north coast. Like I said, accumulations between 4 to 6 inches are expected. Now the next system to be aware of is this low pressure we're going to see come out of the North Pacific. It's going to ramp up very quickly into a 989 millibar low, and it's going to also take a very fast easterly track. So expect by Thursday that's going to be across the eastern Aleutian chain. With the west and northern coast ahead of the system is going to stay under a light snowy regime. However, the southern tier of the state is going to be between systems with dry offshore flow across the Gulf Coast locations and also some gustier flow across the Alaska Range. For the southeast, the low pressure system will finally begin to push inland, and we'll see the showers on a downward trend. Expect the temperatures to be fairly cold to about the eastern Copper River Delta. We'll also see that delta with gusts between 30 to 50 miles per hour with a pressure gradient. High pressure will kind of develop inland with the low pressure offshore. Now let's take a look at your temperatures as we head into the overnight hours. We already did see some single digits this morning just south of the Brooks Range. Expect that to happen again. Bettles was 3 degrees this morning. Across the eastern Brooks Range, the coldest with temperatures dropping below zero. And the eastern Beaufort Seacoast back towards the northwest, we'll see temperatures dropping into the lower teens. For the southeast, we're expecting temperatures to be fairly moderate in the upper 30s, with a little bit colder temperature trend across south central. So temperatures along south central to the Kenai Peninsula will range in the mid-teens to mid-20s. So rather cold temperatures, which they haven't seen for the last few days, but have been trending in that direction. Now for the southwest, temperatures are going to mainly be in the upper 20s, with temperatures across the Alaska Peninsula still in the mid-30s. The rest of the Bering can expect temperatures in the lower 40s to upper 30s. As we head into Wednesday, high temperatures are not going to increase too much across the chain and the Alaska Peninsula, just getting into the mid-40 range. Temperatures will be coldest once again across the northern tier of the state, with temperatures only getting into the teens to mid-20s. Across the eastern areas of the state is going to stay really cool as well in the mid-20s, with temperatures only increasing into the mid-30s across much of south central. Coastal areas will see a range between the mid-30s to mid-40s. The southeast will also be in that mid-40 degree range. Now for the overnight temperatures into Thursday morning, expect temperatures to cool cool into the mid-30s across the coastal locations. For Kodiak Island, the southeast, and also a colder temperature trend expected for the Kenai, with temperatures possibly dropping down into the upper teens for most of south central. Now the interior areas and north, we're going to see some of the coldest temperatures yet, with single-digit temperatures and teens being the trends in those locations. Across the west coast, temperatures will generally be in the upper 20s to near 30. For your high temperatures on Thursday afternoon, the coldest once again along the eastern and northern areas of the state, in the teens mostly into the mid-20s as well. Now across the southeast, expect temperatures to be mainly in the mid-40s, and for the southwest, a little bit cooler there in the mid-30s, with the Bering seeing temperatures very much like the southeast in the mid-40s. So it's going to be a cooler trend into the end of the week.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying conditions across the state are going to be quite challenging as we head into Wednesday. We will have a widespread area of IFR and MVFR conditions across the northern tier of the state. Now we also have MVFR conditions across much of the Bering waters, and out here across the southeast, look for IFR conditions across a large part of the southeast, and also MVFR conditions spreading up just to about the northern channels. Conditions during the afternoon, that condition for MVFR, IFR will spread just a little bit further north and not affecting too much of the panhandle just yet, but we do have the IFR conditions across the state dropping further south through Wednesday afternoon. Look for the Bering to see widespread MVFR conditions also continue during the afternoon. For Thursday morning, look for IFR conditions to sneak into the western Aleutian chain and MVFR through the central Aleutians. Now across the state, Thursday morning, IFR and MVFR will once again be widespread through the area, with MVFR conditions coming down towards Kodiak Island. Look for the MVFR and IFR categories to stay there for the southeast, and then as we head into Thursday afternoon, those conditions for MVFR will spread further across the northern areas of the Gulf. The state will see a little bit of a VFR condition there as the storm system drops to the south, so some clearing in the central areas of the state, not really clearing, but we will see better flying conditions. However, the coastal areas will stay down in the MVFR and IFR ranges, and the IFR MVFR ranges across the chain will spread further north and east as another storm system approaches from the North Pacific. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth for tomorrow. We have Anaktuvik Pass going to IFR all day, and Adigan will also stay in the same category of IFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill Pass will be VFR for the day, and Rainy will go from VFR to MVFR. For Windy Pass, expect VFR going down to MVFR, and Isabel will follow that same trend. We'll see Mentastico VFR to MVFR, and Tonita will stay VFR all day. We'll see a clear day over at Portage, and Chilkoot and White Pass will just barely stay in those VFR conditions. I don't think those MVFR categories are going to slip in at the end of the day, but I can't rule that out completely, but thinking that most of the day will be VFR for them. Now here's the freezing levels for tomorrow morning draped across the state along the western coast and along the Gulf waters there, with a 2,000-foot level, a slow rise to 4,000 in the southeastern Gulf, and primarily the 2,000-foot level across the Bering slowly rises south of the chain to 4,000. Now, for your icing concerns tomorrow, look for areas across the northern tier of the state having mostly isolated and moderate conditions across the northern areas. Now, across the eastern areas of the Bering, look for icing below 5,000 feet, including the southeast. Take a look at the jet stream here. We have an amplified pattern that's setting up with a strong 160-knot flow across the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. And then to the north, we do have a polar jet that's starting to pick up around the low pressure system and ridging out towards Kamchatka. A little bit stronger northerly flow, so we're seeing a little bit more dynamic pattern aloft. And here at the 9,000-foot level, we have a strong northerly flow on the backside of the low pressure system with a change of direction across the eastern areas of the state. And then we have another low pressure system sitting across the Gulf waters. So change of direction along the system. Thankfully, the strongest winds are at the base of that low pressure. Now across the western tier of the state, they're going to be affected by the northerly flow, and a ridge pattern is going to be traversing the central areas of the Bering. So change of wind direction and primarily a 20 to 35 knot flow across the area. It's set down towards the Alaska Peninsula in eastern Aleutians, 35 to 40 knots. Now we have a similar pattern at the 3,000-foot level, a little bit stronger flow across the central Aleutians to Shimia, 25 to 40 knots out of the southwest direction. Northerly flow is very much the same across the eastern Bering, and along the west coast expect between 20 to 40 knots along those areas. And then across most of the state, we're going to see that same pattern with a low pressure across the Gulf, change of wind direction around here, a little bit stronger surface winds across the Kenai towards Kodiak, and across the northern tier of the state, north between 10 to 20. And the turbulent areas will be a concern across the northwest and much of the Bering locations, all below 5,000 feet.
In the 1840s, a constant stream of immigrants crossed the ocean to make a new home in the United States. San Francisco Harbor got its first wharf. New Orleans became the fourth largest port in the world. Steamships increased the speed and volume of maritime commerce. The pressure for new nautical charts for the new territories fell squarely on the shoulders of the survey's second superintendent, Alexander Dallas Bache. The great-grandson of Benjamin Franklin, Bache brought both scientific and political savvy to the job. He built the survey into a scientific powerhouse that harnessed the latest technology to advance the precision of surveying. One of his achievements was to use the brand new invention of the telegraph to improve the accuracy of fixing longitude. Surveyors determined longitude, that is the distance east or west on the globe, by measuring differences in the time a star is seen in place A versus the time it is seen in place B. But traveling with a clock over distances can lead to inaccuracies. Bache recognized that the telegraph could eliminate the need for the clock to travel. In 1846, he conducted an experiment connecting an astronomer in Philadelphia to a clock in Washington, D.C. by having an instantaneous way of marking the time a star was seen in the two cities, Dehne determined a remarkably accurate calculation of longitude. Dehn's technique was called the American method and was soon emulated worldwide. The endless pursuit of accuracy in surveying had advanced yet again. Dehne also set a new standard for tide measurements. Before Dehne, measuring tides was primarily done by reading markings on a graduated tide staff in the water and noting the time. It took days of manual recording to get data solid enough to make tide predictions. Dehne introduced a new device, an automatic tide gauge that traced the water movement up and down on graph paper. In 1854, one of the new gauges was installed in San Francisco. Though the technology has changed over time, it marked the beginning of continuous tide observations in this one spot. More than 150 years later, water level data is still being gathered here. Just 6 months after the San Francisco tide gauge was installed, a small tsunami wave crossed the Pacific. The tsunami would have gone unnoticed if not for the new tide gauge. Dehne looked at the seemingly insignificant data and made a remarkable calculation. He looked at the time the waves hit San Francisco and was able to compute the average depth of the Pacific Ocean. His estimate turned out to be remarkably accurate. But perhaps Dehne's most visible achievement is his role in helping establish a new code for U.S. navigation called Red Right Return. This system, still the standard for ports throughout America, places red painted buoys on the right side of a channel when entering a harbor. Despite Dehne's success in science and navigation, he was having trouble staffing his survey teams on the West Coast. The California gold rush was drawing many able-bodied men away from less lucrative survey work. At one point, a survey crew even mutinied and threw their commander overboard so that they could join the prospecting frenzy. Dehne put out a call. Wanted. Young men willing for 1 year to do any duty, however hard or manual, incident to the survey on the western coast. Answering his call was one of the greatest scientists to ever work for the survey, George Davidson. In 1850, Davidson started at Point Conception near Santa Barbara, California. The surveyors made countless surf landings on the rocky coast in all kinds of weather. Davidson was swamped and tossed overboard frequently. Others paid more dearly, including 6 men who died when their boat overturned in 1867. Still, they persevered. For the next 7 years, they traveled up and down the coast, locating the major headlands, uncovering dangerous shoals, and determining the placement for lighthouses and buoys still in use today. (1871). The country is healing from the divisions of the Civil War. New territories are on the verge of statehood. The surveyors have their own way of bringing the country together. By building a scientifically solid foundation for a new national reference system that determines latitude, longitude, and elevation in the United States. They chose to survey along the 39th parallel, a line of latitude that starts in Cape May, New Jersey, and ends in Point Arena, California. Surveying this transcontinental arc was a massive undertaking. The enterprise took nearly 30 years to complete. The only means of transportation for the heavy survey equipment were horses, mules, and sturdy legs. Teams were sent to different mountaintops. The distances between peaks were tremendous, 190 miles at times. The key to crossing the vastness was sunlight. Using an instrument called a heliotrope, a surveyor on one mountain peak would flash a signal to the main team of observers on another peak. The main team would take at least 34 different readings of the angle to the distant peak.
308,
308,
148.
Then they would average the results in order to improve accuracy.
6.3.
6.3.
From 1871 to 1899, the surveyors covered 2,625 miles. When they were done, charts from the East Coast, Gulf Coast, and West Coast could all be properly aligned on a national grid. Today, these land-based surveyors continue to be responsible for what is now known as the National Spatial Reference System, a 50-state network of highly accurate control points that defines latitude, longitude, and elevation in the United States. This network is the key to our country's infrastructure. Every construction, transportation, and mapping project uses this network as its starting point.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now let's take a look at your ice edge. Across the northeastern Beaufort Seacoast, we are seeing the ice beginning to grow. So expect that pattern to occur during the next few days as the air mass that's dropping down towards the coast is going to continue to help that ice freeze up along the edge there. We also have areas along the Norton Sound near Amonic. The Yukon Delta is seeing some ice formation around the deltas in those locations. So we are getting into that season where that ice pattern is going to start to expand area-wide. Now across the southeast forecast for Wednesday, expect some gusty southerly flow across the area. We do have some gales along the northern waters with winds ranging between 20 to 45 knots on your Wednesday. Now seas across the inner channels will be between 4 to 9 feet, highest seas towards the Dixon entrance there, and then the outer waters will be between 15 to 16 feet. On Thursday, expect gusty winds to change direction across the northern channels there at 25 knots, with 25 knots from the southeast towards the Dixon entrance, and then the outer waters will see a change of wind direction, west becoming more southerly to the north between 15 to 25 knots. Mainly small crafts on your Wednesday, with seas between 3 to 6 feet across the inner channels, and then we'll see around 15 to 20 feet across the outer waters. Now for the northern and western Bering Gulf of Alaska locations, expect a stronger northerly flow with gusty conditions out of the Copper River Delta up to 45 knots. And we'll see gustier conditions also along the inlet. However, prevailing winds will be out of the north at 15 knots. 35 knots towards the Amatui Islands there, with seas on this day between 10 to 12 feet across the Gulf waters and along the southern inlet, with seas between 3 to 4 feet across the Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. On Thursday, expect northerly flow to continue, a little bit gustier there across the Gulf waters. Small craft and gale advisories around the Kenai Peninsula. 20 knots across the inlet with seas around 5 feet, and for the Prince William Sound, seas will be 4 feet. Across the Gulf waters, expect between 8 to 11 feet. Let's take a look at the Alaska Peninsula near Kodiak Island. We're expecting a northwesterly flow on Wednesday with gales towards Kodiak Island and the southeastern side of the peninsula. Seas on the Bering side will be between 6 to 8 feet, with seas between 7 to 17 feet on the Pacific side. Now let's take a look at Thursday, more northwesterly flow, small crafts across the entire area. And then we'll see seas on the Bering side, 7 to 11 feet, and 6 to 11 feet on the Pacific side. Let's take a look at the Aleutians now. Let me move on the other side of the screen so you can see this pretty good. We'll see a very strong gusty westerly flow across the eastern and central Aleutians with a change of wind direction out towards Shemya out of the southeast at 30 knots. Overall area is going to see between 7 to 12 foot seas, and then as we head into your Thursday forecast, a little bit stronger winds here for gales for the eastern or western half of the Aleutians, and we'll see a change of wind directions across the area too with the approaching low from the North Pacific. Now seas on this day will be a little bit higher, between 7 to 20 feet. Highest seas are going to be out towards the western Aleutians. The west coast for your Wednesday forecast is going to see a northwesterly flow, so small crafts south of Nunivak Island and towards the central areas of the Bering will see seas on this day between 3 to 8 feet. On your Thursday forecast, expect northerly flow to continue with small crafts on there across the west coast. We'll see seas on this day between 3 to 6 feet as well. Now for your Wednesday forecast for the north and northwestern areas, we'll see gusty north to northeasterly flow, and seas on this day will be between 4 to 6 feet with freezing spray conditions across the area. Freezing spray will also continue on Thursday with that strong northerly flow continuing. Now, also small crafts is going to be a problem across the Chukchi Sea south towards the Bering Strait. Let's recap your forecast for tonight. We do have winter weather advisories from Barrow down towards the eastern Brooks Range. That's out through tomorrow morning for 4 to 6 inches of snow, and high surf advisories along the north coast there through tomorrow afternoon. Now across the interior areas, some light snow is possible with the low pressure system moving into the southeast tonight, and then on Wednesday continuing to bring rain to the southeast. Strong offshore flow behind this low pressure system, especially across the Gulf, brings some gusty flow between 30 to 50 miles per hour. Across the backside of the system, ridging will be replaced by a low pressure system that'll track quickly to the east.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.